The night Madame Gold screamed that someone would die in her compound, her voice rolled across Bomba Street like thunder before a storm. Neighbors heard it through closed windows, tenants froze where they stood, children clutched their mother's wrappers. Madame Gold stood in the center of the yard, her wrapper loose around her waist, eyes blazing red with rage, a thick wooden stick raised high in her hand. Spittle flew from her mouth as she shouted curses into the air, promising death, promising blood, promising that nobody would leave her compound alive. People thought they had seen madness before, but this was something deeper, something darker. What no one knew was that this moment was the end of a long story that had begun months earlier, a story filled with fear, tears, humiliation, and quiet prayers whispered into the night. 3 months earlier, the compound at number 14 Bomba Street in Freetown was known as a place of suffering. The house was big, with 12 rooms arranged around a dusty yard, and it belonged to Madame Gold. She rented the rooms to poor people who had nowhere else to go: market women, drivers, widows, laborers, people who worked hard every day just to survive. On the outside, Madame Gold was simply a landlady. On the inside, she was something else entirely. She ruled her compound with cruelty, shouting, threats, and violence. Kindness was a language she did not speak. Every month, without warning, she increased the rent. No explanation, no discussion, just a new amount and a deadline. If anyone complained, she insulted them. If anyone argued, she fought them. If anyone tried to move out quietly, she locked their door and kept all their belongings inside. At exactly 6 o'clock every morning, her stick would hit doors like a drum of war. She would shout until the entire compound woke up. She asked the same question every day, not because she needed an answer, but because she enjoyed the fear it caused. "Where is my money?" She reminded everyone that this was not their father's house. Pay or pack out. That was her law. In room 3 lived Sister Comfort, a fish seller from the market. Her hands always smelled of smoked fish and salt. She had 3 children and no husband. 2 years earlier, death had taken him suddenly, leaving her alone to carry the weight of the family. Every morning before sunrise, she went to the market. Every night, she returned exhausted, counting small notes, calculating how to stretch little money into food, school fees, and rent. Life was already hard enough, but under Madame Gold, it became unbearable. One month, sickness entered Sister Comfort's house. Her youngest son fell seriously ill, burning with fever, crying through the night. She spent the little rent money she had on hospital bills and medicine. When rent day came, she only had half the amount. With tears in her eyes and fear in her heart, she went to Madame Gold and knelt before her, explaining everything, begging for time, swearing on the lives of her children that she would complete the payment. Madame Gold did not listen. She looked at the money with disgust, spat on the ground, and asked if she was running a charity. She mocked the sick child, calling him useless, then grabbed Sister Comfort by the hair and dragged her across the yard. She beat her in front of everyone, raining insults and blows on a woman who was already broken. Children screamed, neighbors watched, nobody moved. Fear had paralyzed them all. That day, Madame Gold threatened to throw Sister Comfort and her children into the street if the money was not complete by the next morning. That night, Sister Comfort borrowed from 5 different people. She swallowed her pride, begged, promised, and cried until she gathered the money. She paid the rent the next day, but something inside her died quietly. Shame settled deep in her heart, heavier than hunger. In room 7 lived Mr. Johnson, an old taxi driver with tired eyes and gentle manners. For 8 years, he had lived in the compound without trouble. He paid on time, helped neighbors, fixed small things, and shared advice. Then one day, his taxi broke down. He spent everything fixing it so he could continue working. When rent day came, he was short by a small amount. Respectfully, cap in hand, he begged Madame Gold for 1 week. 8 years meant nothing to her. She laughed, insulted him, and called the police that same day. 2 officers came and arrested him like a criminal in front of everyone. The tenants had to gather money to bail him out. When he returned, shame crushed him. He packed his things and left quietly. Nobody ever heard from him again. This was how Madame Gold ruled. Fear was her currency. The police were her weapons. She paid them monthly and they enforced her cruelty without question. The tenants hated her, but they were trapped. Rent everywhere else was higher. Poverty kept them locked in her compound like prisoners. At night, Sister Comfort sometimes whispered to others that God would punish Madame Gold one day, but weeks passed, then months, and nothing changed. Madame Gold only became worse. Then, one hot Tuesday morning, a stranger arrived. She was a young woman carrying a small bag, quiet and observant. She looked about 20, but her eyes carried a weight that did not belong to youth. She introduced herself as Amina and asked about room 10 at the back of the compound. When she said she could pay 6 months' rent in advance, Madame Gold's face lit up with greedy excitement. She smiled sweetly, pretending to be kind, pretending to be a mother to her tenants. The room was terrible. The roof leaked, the window was broken, rats ran freely, but Amina accepted it without complaint and paid immediately. From that day, something shifted, though nobody could yet explain how. For 2 weeks, Amina kept to herself. She left early and returned late. She greeted people politely but never lingered. The tenants whispered about her strangeness but minded their business. Then one Saturday afternoon, Madame Gold, angry from personal troubles, went searching for someone to punish. She chose Amina. She accused her of burning candles, of endangering the house, of disrespect. When Amina calmly denied it, Madame Gold slapped her hard across the face. Silence fell over the compound. Something changed in Amina's eyes, not anger, not fear, but a calm darkness, like a storm waiting to break. When Madame Gold raised her hand again, Amina caught it mid-air. The grip was unbreakable. No matter how Madame Gold struggled, she could not free herself. In panic, she called the police, confident they would destroy this small girl like all the others. Inspector Bangora arrived with his men, full of arrogance and power. He expected fear. What he met instead was a smile that chilled his blood. When he ordered Amina's arrest, she warned him once. He laughed. Then everything happened too fast for the mind to understand. The officers holding her flew through the air. Inspector Bangora was lifted like a child and thrown into the gutter. Fear replaced arrogance. Power shifted in front of everyone's eyes. Amina spoke calmly, exposing corruption, naming injustice, and demanding change. She did not shout, she did not curse. Her authority came from something deeper. When she threatened to expose their crimes, the police begged for mercy. They fled the compound in shame, leaving behind silence and disbelief. Madame Gold collapsed. The woman who had ruled through terror now shook like a leaf. When Amina confronted her, she did not use violence, she used truth. She stripped away excuses and revealed the lonely, wounded person beneath the wickedness. Madame Gold broke down and confessed her pain, her betrayal, her anger. For the first time in years, she felt shame. That day, apologies were spoken, promises were made, change began. Rent was reduced, repairs were done, kindness replaced cruelty. The compound transformed, and so did Madame Gold. Amina stayed for 2 years, teaching, helping, protecting. Then she left quietly, seeking other places where injustice lived. Years later, the story is still told in Freetown, a reminder that wickedness can be confronted, power can be challenged, and even the hardest hearts can change when faced with truth. And in the quiet of the night, Madame Gold prays not for wealth or control, but for the strength to remain kind, because she learned her lesson, and that lesson changed everything.